check my math and let me see if I have this straight. You've got 5 officers, all between 24 and 32, all with under 5 years experience, driving around in souped up sports cars wearing jeans and hoodies with no supervision? Cause what is this, fucking 21 Jump Street? Oh, and you know how you can tell you're living in a totally unserious clown world? When the professional journalists look you right in the eye and confidently assert that black mayor plus black police chief plus black cop 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 plus black victim equals white supremacy. It's good to see those woke arithmetic classes at Harvard have been paying off, because if we are ever going to compete in the global marketplace of the future, we need to make damn sure every kid remembers that 2 plus 2 equals racism, 7 times 3 equals Jim Crow, and the square root of 16, obviously, is slavery. Now, normally when you picture things like this, non-uniformed officers in unmarked cars operating ostensibly under the rubric of law enforcement, but being, as a practical matter, little more than a goon squad unto themselves, we don't associate that sort of thing with American policing normally. We associate it, and quite rightly, with the third world shithole banana republics that we are not supposed to call shitholes. The kind of places where part of the local culture is roadblocks with burning tires where some guys in tracksuits try to shake you down for a bribe, and when you threaten to call the cops on them, they all produce their badges. It's not pleasant to tell ourselves that's the road that we're heading down, but it seems pretty clear we are. Now, the Memphis PD has drastically relaxed its hiring standards, twice within the past 4 years. They cut the education requirement in half, they eliminated the physical fitness standards altogether, and they started hiring convicted felons, and they started handing out $7,000 signing bonuses. And despite all of that, they say they are still an astounding 500 officers short of being fully staffed. It is reasonable to surmise, then, that most or all of the officers in question in this fatal beating would not have been eligible to be hired by this department if they had applied as recently as 2016. And gosh, I wonder why it is so darn difficult to hire police officers in the United States in the 2020s. You think it's got anything to do with the fact that we've made it into a job that nobody in their right mind would ever want? When a career in law enforcement means if you don't do everything 100% perfect every single day, you might have MSNBC declaring you the grand dragon of the freaking KKK on the evening news one night? So we complain about the quality of policing, and we respond to it by creating a cultural climate that only makes the quality of policing that much worse. You want to talk about a vicious and destructive feedback loop? Well, there it is. Number 1, rogue cop does a bad thing. Number 2, let's demonize all cops for the actions of the one guy. And then number 3, no decent people want to become cops anymore. So number 4, congratulations, now you've got 1,000 incompetent rogue cops instead of just the one. Well done indeed. That is what I call creative problem solving. Now, it was an extraordinarily severe lapse of good judgment to have these 5 very young, very inexperienced, very underqualified officers, all of whom clearly should never have been in this line of work, operating as effectively an independent vice squad with little or no oversight. Now, I am old enough to remember when, if some officers got caught on tape brutalizing a suspect, the police chief's ass got fired. Daryl Gates sure as hell lost his job over Rodney King because that is how accountability works. The buck stops at the top. But not in Memphis, apparently. Because this chick is the new Tony Fauci, I guess. She's all over the fake news airwaves, soaking up plaudits from Don Lemon and Joy Reid about how brave and competent and decisive she is and how wonderfully she's handled this whole situation. And yes, I did consider looking up her name because I didn't remember it, but I don't want to impute that much dignity to such a clearly loathsome individual, so I will thus continue calling her this chick. And anybody who doesn't like it is more than welcome to call the complaint line at 1-800-546-3243. That's 1-800-JIM-EAGLE. Which brings us to the matter of affirmative action in law enforcement hiring. Now, the current Memphis police chief, she used to be the Atlanta police chief, but they ran her bony 107-pound ass right out of Atlanta for doing such a terrible job. In spite of that, Memphis snapped her right up like she was the hottest free agent on the market, which she pretty much was. Black woman police chiefs are the hot fashion accessory of the season, don't you know? And here's where most reasonable people say, but wait. Even still, when the consequences of hiring the wrong police chief can be so disastrous, why do it? Can the virtue signal possibly be worth it? And here's the insidious part. Because, oh yes, yes it can. Why? Because ever since the Obama administration, certain federal dollars are apportioned to local governments according to how well they score on the diversity checklist. And you get more points, and thus more dollars, if you do your diversity hiring higher up the chain of command. So a black woman police chief, that's like a human lottery ticket. That is multiple diversity boxes ticked and a high-profile public position. So open up the coffers and let that delicious federal money start a-flowing, baby. Meanwhile, your city descends to anarchy, your thug cops beat people to death in the streets, and you get to do the media self-congratulation tour. What a country! From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where there is only one reason why a one-legged midget albino Eskimo has never walked on the moon, and that reason is bigotry. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And in what could be the sternest shot yet across the bow of Vladimir Putin and the Russians, the Danish defense minister, Jakob Ellemann-Jensen, says his country is fully prepared to start conscripting women for the battlefield in order to check Russian aggression in Europe. Because there is nothing that strikes fear into the heart of a tyrant quicker than the sight of an entire battalion of 107-pound blonde girls with ponytails coming over the horizon with armed hostility on their minds. In fact, if the Danes take this step and double the size of their fighting force, that'll give them a total of about 612 armed effectives, I believe. In fact, Denmark plans on putting up such a spirited resistance this time, it's going to take Putin twice as long to conquer them as it took Hitler. So 8 hours instead of 4, basically. But it could be worse. You could be France. So count your blessings where you can get them, I say. Okay. Jim Eagle has just fact-checked me because we are all about the highest journalistic standards of rigor on this program, and he tells me the Danes can actually field between 7,000 and 9,000 armed effectives. So, if you double that with female conscription, then that could potentially be almost 2 full divisions, which is probably enough to march on London at this point, but that's a subject for another time. You know what matchup I would like to see? The Danes against the Swiss. The multi-tools versus the breakfast pastries. How would that one turn out? And then Luxembourg shows up uninvited and just kicks everybody's ass and walks away. You can't sleep on those Luxembourgers, is all I'm saying. And I think they actually resisted the Germans for longer than the Danes did, so they've got scoreboard on their side too, because, as we know, war is the only sport that really matters. But the Danish example teaches us a very important lesson, and that's that just like in law enforcement, in national defense, diversity and inclusion are the only things that matter. Now, there are some men who would tell you, white supremacists, I believe they're called, that there are certain institutions, the police and the military, to name a couple, that are too crucially important to be turned into political hobby horses and vehicles for cynical, disingenuous, corrosive, politically correct virtue-signaling horseshit. And to that, I say nonsense. For the historical record attests that on the morning of 6 June 1944, the beaches of Normandy were stormed by an army of morbidly obese, purple-haired, neck-tattooed, gender-queer social anxiety sufferers, many of whom paid the ultimate price to make the world safe for democracy. Wait, what? That's not what the historical record attests? Are you fact-checking me again? If you abuse that privilege, I'm going to take that fact-check button away, and then how will you feel? Now, it used to be thought by the ignorant, benighted military theorists of the past that it was generally a good thing to fight your wars with the biggest, strongest men in your population. There are some hopelessly backward nations where they still persist in clinging to such outmoded ways of thinking. China, Russia, India, Pakistan, to name a few. Oh, and fun fact, those guys all have nuclear weapons. But they've got a surprise in store if they ever try to cross swords with the forces of diversity and inclusion. Let me tell you what, there are some people, idiots I think they're called, who would actually have you believe that the colorblind meritocracy of the U.S. Armed Forces is the source of much of America's moral credibility on the world stage over the past 7 decades. But those people are most sorely mistaken, for on the new woke battlefield of the future, A force built by enforced diversity hiring quotas will always prevail over a force where guys got their positions by being good at their jobs, for that is the antiquated thinking of the past. It has no place on the new woke battlefield of the future. On the new woke battlefield of the future, we defeat the enemy not with bullets and bombs, but with safe spaces and microaggressions. And when our adversary meets us with the weapons of war, we will meet him with participation ribbons and drag queen story hour and lots of really long group hugs. On the new woke battlefield of the future, warfare is an asymmetric endeavor, so we want to be extra careful about our pronoun usage. Your enemy is a determined and capable foe, but he has feelings just like any other man. In fact, he might not be a man at all. He might be a trans woman, and you are required under the terms of the Geneva Convention to treat that fine lady with all the dignity and all the respect that befits a U.S. serviceman, servicewoman, service person. All right, I think I've pushed that riff about as far as I can. What the hell else is there in the news today? Oh! Here's a fun story out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where Turning Point USA was holding an event featuring former transgender speakers who have now detransitioned, and you can probably guess what happens next. So they had the event and everybody minded their own business and went home, right? Yeah, no. That's not what happened, no. The obligatory mob of angry, shrieking transgender activists showed up right on cue and tried to wreck the event, because this is just how things work when you have a state religion, which we do. Whenever a group of heretics gets together and tries to engage in unauthorized thought or speech or expression, you respond in the way that reasonable people do when they know they occupy the moral and the factual high ground, by punching people and beating them with sticks while screaming inane slogans at the top of your lungs. And whenever I see one of these groups of transgender activists, and I'm thinking specifically of the anti-Dave Chappelle protest that they had at Netflix HQ last year, I think it was, where the crowd of loving, tolerant trans activists beat the shit out of this guy for holding a sign that said, "Jokes are funny." I am struck by how very, very miserable these people always seem, which is strange, because we are told, and it's a tenet of the state religion, so one mustn't question it, that for a person who is supposedly trapped in the body of the wrong gender and desperately trying to get out, their only route to happiness and fulfillment is to take a bunch of hormones and have cosmetic surgery on their sex organs. But then they never seem happier afterward. Am I the only one noticing that? If anything, they seem even more bitter and miserable than they did before. Almost as if they were sold a bill of goods by a morally incoherent culture and a predatory medical industry full of Frankensteinian doctors who, if we were a less morally incoherent culture, would all be in fucking prison. And man, if you really want to see what leftist tolerance and inclusion look like, try having regrets about your gender transition. Better yet, try talking honestly about those regrets on any major social media platform, and then watch the sensitive, tolerant leftists emerge out of the woodwork to slander and dox you and basically do anything they possibly can think of to make your life into a living hell. It's funny how that works, isn't it? If you announce on social media that you're becoming gay or trans or whatever, then people you've never met or heard of will materialize out of the ether, telling you how courageous and brave and awesome you are, how it's so great that you have chosen to live your authentic truth and be honest with the world about who you really are. But if you change your mind, if you even intimate that you might be contemplating changing your mind, get ready for those same kind, tolerant, sensitive friends to start being a little bit less so. So, can we just stop pretending that the woke leftist project has anything to do with tolerance? Because it so totally doesn't. This stuff is the opposite of tolerance, and it permeates and defines their views on every single issue, not just the transgender thing. When you are firebombing crisis pregnancy centers, that is not tolerance. When you're declaring people domestic terrorists because they don't want gay porn in the kindergarten classroom, that is not tolerance. When you're calling teenage girls transphobic bigots because they are uncomfortable being in a locker room with naked adult men, that is not tolerance. That is, you will obey us or we will hurt you. You will go along with the program or you will be made an example of. And needless to say, This is not the way people act who are secure in the rectitude of their own views. It is the way people act when they know they're full of shit. It's the way people act who know they cannot prevail in a free and open marketplace of ideas. So, they default to intimidation and fear because they are despots, and they know they are despots, and intimidation and fear are always the first and last recourse of the despot. Intimidation and fear are all the despot ever has. And here's a fun story to close with. Illegal aliens in New York City, having been lovingly bused to that fine town from Texas by Governor Greg Abbott, they are now refusing to leave the luxury hotel where they have been ensconced courtesy of the U.S. taxpayer, and what's more, they say they are kind of offended that they are still being kept in a hotel at all because Joe Biden has had more than enough time to find them, and I quote, permanent homes, because I guess that's just the way these things work now. People ingress our territory in contravention of our laws, and our job is to find them a really nice house just as quickly as possible that they can live in for free, permanently and forever. I don't want a damn apartment either. I don't want a damn townhouse. I want an acre and a half at minimum. Let's say a nice, tasteful, split-level ranch. Nothing too gaudy, but you bastards better not skimp on the swimming pool. I better see a diving board and a nice little cabana, or this deal is off, and I'm taking my ass back to Haiti, goddammit. I can't believe what a racist country this is. All I'm asking to be able to show up uninvited and stay forever and have you pay for everything. I mean, what's wrong with that? Oh, and I also will need to bring my entire extended family from back home. I'm sure that's not a problem. It's really quite a modest request, really. You gringos are so selfish! And the hoteliers who get forcibly dragged into these things, well, they get to live in their own special and unique version of hell. Oh, what's that? You thought in America a business owner can run his business in whatever manner he sees fit? Well, not in New York City, baby. In New York City, the mayor can simply commandeer your hotel on little to no notice and fill it full of illegal aliens for as long as he damn well likes, on the vague promise that you will be reimbursed at market rate for the rooms at some indeterminate later date, but don't hold your breath. And good luck renting any of your other rooms out during this whole time when the hallways are being overrun with Hondurans and Venezuelans and Haitians and Costa Ricans and Salvadorans and who the hell ever else, and good luck getting the city to help repair the damage to the hotel afterward. That's the reward you get for working your ass off and building a successful business. Joe Biden and Eric Adams show up and spray paint all over the walls and piss on the floor and then kick you right in the testicles, and they walk off laughing and high-fiving each other. Welcome to being a business owner in America in the 2020s. And with that, I think we will adjourn for the evening. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Have a pleasant tomorrow. I will see you Wednesday. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.